Well, welcome to today's rant. And I have just finished a tour around a big part of our city. I did it on my motorcycle this morning, trying to project what we can expect for tonight. They're saying the rivers through here will probably peak tonight, sometime around midnight. Well, I can tell you, it's different places. Some rivers seem like they're high, but not terribly high. And, it really depends on how much comes down. But overall, I think we're in pretty good shape in Charlotte. There's some places, some parts of Charlotte that are not, that are already flooded. Any more coming down is just going to be terrible. Of course, we're not looking for more rain. It's just what rained over the last few days in the territory above us that is going to flow through here. But I think as a city, we got off really easy. I'm just thankful because, there's some that feel like it was the worst day of their life, and you can understand that. There's some here that got devastated, but for the overall, I think, escaped much of what was expected from Hurricane Florence here. And we've had big hurricane damage here before, but east of us, like from Charlotte east, it just gets progressively worse. And I mean, it is terrible. But our rivers and reservoirs, we're going to see. But I think the real serious issue is east of us. And I think if you're thinking, I know a lot of people are responding, sending teams still, kitchens, mobile kitchens and things like that. But it's not, I don't think it's needed here in Charlotte. It's really needed to the east, especially the Wilmington area, but Wilmington is cut off. You can't get in there unless something's opened up very recently. You just couldn't get in, you couldn't get out. They were running low on both fuel and food in Wilmington and some of the other communities down there too. You see roads throughout the eastern part of our state have been devastated. Many of them washed out. You see vehicles scattered all over the place. And, but that's something that is going to take a while. Of course, want to be a part of that. We have a church in Wilmington. We still don't know how our property has done, but we have had, it seems like all of our people there have came through the storm and are doing good. And I told you a little bit about our beach house, and I appreciate your interest in that. Finally was able to see an aerial view of the house today, and it is still there, believe it or not. It's not only there, it looks shockingly good. And there's some sand in the driveway, but even the pier, we've got about 100-yard long pier behind the house that goes out to this dock house and boat lift and all. It didn't even look like that was damaged. Maybe at closer scrutiny, but I was shocked. It looks like the dunes got washed away. I mean, but even anyway, I was just amazed at how little damage there seems to have been done now. Now we may get down there and find that water got in, and it's just a mess. But right now, from the air, I think we experienced a miracle, the miracle of the beach house. And I really am just shocked, but happily shocked. I'm going to go down there as soon as I can, but also so I can be closer to our people in Wilmington, and try to work down there. But I will be here. We have a conference on small groups, home group ministry beginning this Thursday. I'm going to be at that Thursday, and then probably have to leave for the coast right after that. But we'll see. But this is a chance for us to help our neighbors, and we've been helped so many times in so many ways, and it's time for us to help others, and as we've tried to do since we mobilized for the Katrina disaster. Okay, moving right along. Talk about the Kavanaugh nomination, Brett Kavanaugh, and these accusations that he actually, sexually attempted to sexually assault a girl while in high school. As far as I can tell by this, and I haven't listened to too much of the news lately that wasn't centered around the storm and the damage and casualties here in our state, but states, I should say, North and South Carolina. But this is a shocking thing to me. And the one person, the word of one person could do this kind of damage, totally unsubstantiated, could rise up like this. That happened to Clarence Thomas. He called it a high-tech lynching and modern lynching, and it was despicable what happened to Clarence Thomas. And one person's word against his, no evidence, no proof. We're supposed to have a country where you're innocent until proven guilty. Now in the case of Kavanaugh, he's got, I don't know how many dozens of women, even from high school, his high school days, when this supposedly happened, who've come out and said, this is not Brett Kavanaugh, this was not him. And they know him. Then throughout his career, it seems like everywhere he worked, he's got dozens rising up, other women who worked for him and said, this was not that guy. We know him. He would have never done something like this. And, said he's a man of the highest, integrity and his demeanor towards the opposite sex, everything. He's got dozens and dozens, it seems like, coming out almost daily at his defense. Now, I don't remember anyone having this many coming to their defense. And he's saying absolutely, resolutely, was not me. He never did this to that girl or to anyone else. And so, as a biblical people, those who are trying to be biblical, the Bible requires every accusation like that to be verified by at least 2 or 3 witnesses. We see that in the New Testament and the Old Testament. And this is why I think any person could jump up and accuse somebody of anything and ruin a life that has been built on walking righteously and with integrity. Now, the girl, on the other hand, she's doing a very courageous thing. If it's not a politically motivated thing, if she's not being paid, which has happened in the past, and we've seen many of them come out like that, trying to get their minute of fame or whatever, and they can be the most diabolical characters on earth. But let's back up for a minute. Let's give her benefit of the doubt and say she really believes this, even though it may not be true. It could be mistaken identity. It could have been done to her by someone who claimed to have been Brett Kavanaugh. I don't know the particulars, how well this girl knew him in school or anything else. Also, look, I was in high school. Believe it or not, I went to high school. And that was BC. I did not behave very well. To be honest, I've never, ever in my life, in any way, I think, tried to force myself on anyone. And to me, that is a repugnant, just never went there. Can't imagine why anyone would do that, but it happens all the time. But intoxicated, you do things that are not you. You know, I had times, both in high school, unfortunately, and when I was in the Navy, when we were so intoxicated, none of us remembered what happened the night before. I mean, we just were out of it. Could that have happened? There's a tiny chance. I think there is a possibility, but everybody says that was not Brett Kavanaugh during high school. That he really was, you know, a straight up person. And even if something like that happened, you can't use, without some kind of proof, you cannot destroy somebody with accusations. We have to insist on witnesses and proof. Now, sometimes you can't get proof, but you can have some evidence. Now, evidence is not necessarily proof, but it is pointing towards a certain conclusion. It makes you think the probability of that conclusion. And in trials, a lot of evidence is not totally conclusive. You cannot say it's absolute, but it's the weight of the evidence that gets to the point where you're sure beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's kind of the way you have to do justice. And if you can't, but you think somebody was guilty, but you don't have that kind of evidence, that kind of proof, then you have to trust the Lord to sort it out. And he promises if we trust him to do it, he will reveal. He will do that. Now, I think in this case, though, I'm not automatically jumping to the assumption that this is someone, even though it came out, the timing is suspect, really suspect. The Democratic Party, Democrats have a history of doing this kind of thing, like they tried to do to Clarence Thomas and to Bork. And it's vile. It's coming back on them. The scripture's clear. You reap what you sow. And this is why it's coming back on so many of liberals and Democrats that are being exposed for stuff like this right now. And if this is a lie, trust me, they're going to pay a terrible price, because you can see the hand of the Lord in many ways exposing things in our government and in our country right now that this is beyond men. So, you know, that's just kind of my take. I don't know, you know, but even if I don't, we have to err on the side, the guy's innocent. He's got to be proven guilty to be guilty. Or there's so much evidence that it's suspect. Right now, the only evidence is itself really suspect. The timing of it has come, no verification, no evidence, no proof, nothing, one person's word. Now, if she is sincere, then she's a woman of incredible courage, and you have to appreciate her for that. But that still doesn't mean it's true. Maybe she was so intoxicated she thought was breath. We don't know all those things. It sounds like a situation where it was just a mess. But right now, the weight of the evidence points pretty overwhelmingly to Brett Kavanaugh's innocence in this thing. So unless something arises that is overwhelming proof or increasing evidence that points to this, other things, I mean, when someone does something like that, it will surface. I mean, this is something that could surface uh, or should, you would think, surface later in life, that that stuff would just come out. But that's not absolute either. Some people may have gotten intoxicated, scared that they don't know what they did the night before, and it was a wake-up call and they never did it again. And like I said, when you're intoxicated, you do things that are not you. They're not your normal self. Okay, that's my take on this thing. And, but to me, the tragedy is the way justice in America is being trashed in so many ways. We don't trust people. We don't treat people fairly. This is not fair. The whole process is not fair. And there are just certain protocols and all that some believe that if it applies to those of opposite political persuasion or something else, it's like, you don't have to be fair, you don't have to play by the rules. And that means we're no longer a nation of laws. We're a nation of lawlessness, sinking into lawlessness. And that's what's happening. We are sinking into lawlessness. But it's not everybody. It's not even a majority. But there's a huge segment in our society that doesn't believe you have to play by the rules. Now, rules are there to ensure that people get treated fairly and justly, and they're there also so that if someone is guilty of something, it will be found out, they will be exposed, and pay the price accordingly. So, but anyway, that's my rant for the day. Thank all of you for praying for Florence, for Hurricane Florence, for our city, for our states, and so many of you offering and many doing things to help in this tragedy here that is mostly on the eastern part of the state. But trust me in this too. Florence means to blossom. I think this is the beginning of harvest. I think it's the beginning of blossom. Things blossom just before they start bearing fruit. And I'm looking for a tremendous harvest. And I think this is a sign of the timing of it. So anyway, hopefully I'll see some of you here at our meeting this weekend. If not, you have to come to our Harvest Fest conference this year. I mean, we got Lou Engle will be there, Daniel Kalinda, two of the great leaders in our country, spiritual leaders. And I think Daniel's emerging as one of the truly extraordinary, maybe, to me, Reinhard Bonnke is one of the greatest evangelists to ever live. And Daniel's seems to be taking that cloak, taking that mantle that Reinhard placed on him, and is resolved to go even further with it. He's a man of remarkable vision and wisdom. I am just so looking forward to being with both of these guys here and our other speakers and ministries that'll be here, Harvest Fest. And that's coming up next month, October. I think it's 17th through the 19th, or right there in that period anyway. It is going to be a time. So if I don't see you soon, please mark it down. You will want to be at this year's Harvest Fest conference at MorningStar. It's all about harvest, and I tell you, we've been preparing for years. This is our first conference I started having back in the I think it was 1990 was our first one right then, and it was all about preparing for the harvest. And listen, now we're right there with the harvest upon us. I think next year we're going to be pretty further along into it. The year after that, 2020, we're going to be in it. We are going to be in the harvest. And anyway, thank all of you for joining me for today's rant.